Are you looking for the best 2024 NFL anytime touchdown props for week 7 of the NFL season? Well, it's a good thing you're here. I've got just what you need on this week's episode of the IDP Plus Touchdown Props Podcast. Welcome back in to week 7 of the IDP Plus Anytime Touchdown Props podcast, where each week I've just been giving out a plethora of players who I feel are in good positions to score each and every week. And I'm just kind of more or less laying it out on the table, buffet style for you guys. We'll kind of go from the smallest odds, smallest payouts to the largest payouts this week, rather than split it up with anchors and odd stretchers. You guys can kind of get that depending on the length of the odds. So we'll go ahead and dive right into week 7, see what we can come up with for this week. So we're going to start it out each and every week with Derrick Henry, and for an anytime touchdown coming in at minus 240 this week, which actually is looking better than last week. I think we're looking at like minus 250 or worse odds. So we're just going to plug Derrick Henry in here this week or every week, because he's just one of those guys that we more often than not, we're going to cash on this, and we don't want to miss out on those couple of games where we don't, because even if it is, adding just a little bit to our parlay and payout, it is helping, and it is a leg that we can feel very good about each and every week. And that makes our puzzle a little bit harder to put together when you're talking about the rest of our parlays. So Derrick Henry at minus 240. I won't spend too much time on this because it really doesn't matter the matchup. This offense runs through Henry. He's going to get his chances. Next on the list, we've got Kyren Williams for an anytime touchdown at minus 195. He goes up against the Las Vegas Raiders. Kyren Williams has been a staple of this offense, especially with Cooper Kupp out. Now with Cooper Kupp back, I believe that more sustained drives will be held. So surprisingly, they've done well at pushing the ball down the field. With Kupp, this just really plays into Kyren Williams. This will help the team push down inside the 20. Inside the 20 is when we know Kyren Williams is going to get all of those valuable touches we need to score. So Kupp returning likely gives Kyren a boost. He's one of our lock plays when the Rams are operating efficiently, kind of alluding to Kupp's return. So the Raiders have allowed 6 touchdowns total to running backs so far this season, and Kyren Williams has 27 rushes inside the 20-yard line. He is by far the favorite inside the 20. I know that Kupp and Nakul haven't been around, so those targets haven't necessarily been there, but I expect this to remain the same with or without Kupp and Nakua. When they get inside the 20, they're going to give it to Kyren on the early downs and give him first crack at the score. So Kyren Williams comes in at minus 195. Next on the list, we've got David Montgomery. He kind of goes into the same pool as Derrick Henry. He's one that's just scored. He's only had 4 games so far since the beginning of last year where he hasn't scored a game. I think I mentioned that last week. So he's just one of those plug and play guys each and every week that we can feel really good about securing. We're often going to hit this far more than we don't. So I won't spend too much time on David Montgomery. He does play a stout Minnesota rush defense, but it really hasn't mattered the matchup. When they get in close, David Montgomery's going to punch it in. I'm not saying he's going to have a big game, but all we need is for him to break the plane. And I believe Detroit scored a rushing touchdown in dang near every game that they score at all. So that's going to be the first one. The first method of scoring is going to be they're going to try to punch it in through the run. So I imagine David Montgomery, again, he's just one of those. If he doesn't hit, he doesn't hit. But we're going to cash on this more often than not. So we want to keep him on this list. Next on the list, we've got Justin Jefferson for an anytime touchdown coming in at minus 160. He gets Detroit at home, which is great, especially considering that. I mean, okay, take this with a grain of salt, because although yes, this is great for our matchup and Justin Jefferson with Aiden Hutchinson going down. You really hate to see that. That's an awful injury. I wish for the best for him, but fortunately for us in the betting world, we can really capitalize on that, because Aiden Hutchinson's 10 pressures and constant presence will not be a factor in this game, which has been a ridiculous factor in their ability to defend the pass so far this season. And Darnold was held to 0 touchdowns against New York a couple of weeks ago before the bye. And now with no Hutchinson on the opposite side of the ball, I think Sam Darnold's going to really be looking to turn things around this week and just come out firing on all cylinders. Against Detroit, he's going to have to air it out. And JJ's going to be the primary target. He's going to be the first one that Darnold looks to score and keep them in this game. So I don't anticipate that Jefferson goes scoreless for too long. Darnold's going to be looking to hone in on him in this game. And like I said, Hutch was the primary reason that the Detroit pass defense looked great, because when you're averaging 10 pressures a game and the next highest pressure average in the league is like 5, he has double the pressures of anybody else in the league on a game-to-game basis. That plays a huge factor in their ability to defend the pass. Now you don't have those 10 pressures coming at you each play, and then the ones that he doesn't get pressures on, you really have to think about where he's at. You don't have to play those mind games. Darnold can just sit in the pocket and freaking cruise at this game. So I really like Justin Jefferson at -160. Next, we've got Brian Robinson for an anytime touchdown at -145 against Carolina. I won't spend too much time on this because Carolina is the best rushing matchup, or best matchup to running backs. It's a smash play each and every week. The day that Carolina stops an opposing running back from scoring is the day that hell freezes over. And I swear to you, if you go back and look at the statistics, they are probably pushing 30 straight games of allowing a rushing touchdown. This is something about like as reliable as David Montgomery and Derrick Henry getting first crack at a touchdown. You can almost bet that Carolina is going to allow Brian Robinson to score. He's scored in all but one game that he's played so far this season as well. If you even want to, you could probably sprinkle in a 2+ touchdown bet for just to kind of have probably turn $5 into $20 or something like that. Just kind of one of those games where anything could happen. I think there's been several running backs so far this season that have had 2 touchdowns against this defense, and I don't see any signs of stopping. On that same note, moving on to our next player here, we're actually going to get into Terry McLaurin in the same game. This is just too great of a matchup on both sides of the ball not to capitalize or try to put some money on, because both defenses are going to allow points to be scored. And we're looking at Terry McLaurin here at -125 to get a touchdown against Carolina. And Carolina is, like I say, just too great of a matchup not to try to come out with some extra cash on. And they've allowed they're first in touchdowns allowed to running backs this season, and they are tied for third in touchdowns allowed to wide receivers. So we've got a lot of opportunity here for Washington running backs and wide receivers, and Terry McLaurin and Robinson ought to be the first to, get a chance to score. The lowest point total allowed by Carolina is 22 to Las Vegas. They have just been letting teams score and score and score. So you can almost bet there's going to be at least 2 touchdowns scored in this game. Brian Robinson's probably going to get one. Jaden Daniels might rush one in. You might have a third tier 3 wide receiver or something, a wide receiver 3 score, something like that. But Terry McLaurin's going to be the first one through the air to get the chance. So if he doesn't capitalize, then yeah, we might see somebody else get it. But there will be a wide receiver touchdown scored, and I'm willing to bet that McLaurin's going to be the first chance here. He's the favored receiver in the red zone. He's got 4 targets to the next highest, which is Luke McCaffrey, who has 2. And not even considering, or if we consider some other than the red zone targets, Terry McLaurin's touchdowns have also come from bombs this year. So against the Carolina Panthers, who are very easy to exploit, I think Terry McLaurin could break coverage and break off a long gain this week. Next, we've got J.K. Dobbins coming in with an anytime touchdown at -120 against the Arizona Cardinals. Cardinals have allowed the 9th most touchdowns to opposing running backs. You've got Gus Edwards now down. J.K. Dobbins saw 24 touches last week. I anticipate that continues to be the case. I bet he sees 18+ touches again this week. Kamani Vidal saw some work last week, and I bet he gets a little bit of work, but I don't think he's going to get quite the touches that Gus Edwards had. So we can really bank on J.K. Dobbins being the featured back here. And he's just going to get more snaps due to Gus Edwards going down. He had 70% in the last couple of games. This is a run-first scheme, and he and McConkey lead the team in touches inside the 10. So We really like those guys that are getting the touches in the red zone and the gold zone inside the 10. I mean, when you're getting in close, you want to use when you're betting on touchdowns anyways, you want to bet on the guys that are getting all of those looks up and close. So Arizona's allowed 6 touchdowns to running backs this season, and low-key have let running backs run wild at times. Brian Robinson had a 100-plus yard game with a touchdown, and so did Demont earlier this season, I think. J.K. Dobbins with his volume could very well be the next one to do so. Arizona has not been great. They've had times where they've looked okay, but they haven't really shut down any great running backs. And I feel like in this kind of scheme with the setup that J.K. Dobbins kind of has in the position that he's in, I think that he has a great opportunity to capitalize this week and really help the Chargers kind of get out in front, especially when Arizona doesn't have Marvin Harrison Jr. on the other side, and they struggled last week without him. Pretty much keeps them not necessarily one-dimensional, but they don't have near as many layers to them now without Marvin Harrison. It's pretty much just Kyler and James Conner running around the field, and Kyler's going to be looking at Greg Dortch and guys like that, but there's just not going to be too much production. They're going to have to this game could get out of hand and J.K. Dobbins could get 20 plus touches. I guess that would be like maybe the only caveat to this is if maybe the Chargers get up early, but I don't know. I think the Cardinals are at least going to be competitive. I don't imagine that they're going to be just blown out in this one. So yeah, I like J.K. for a touchdown this week at -120. Next on the list, we've got Green Bay wide receivers. Namely, I'm going to probably lean into Jayden Reed, whose anytime touchdown prop is at +115. But honestly, 2 of these guys at least could score, with Watson coming in at +170 and Romeo Doubs coming in at +170 as well. They go up against Houston, who's tied with Carolina for the second most touchdowns allowed to wide receivers with 9. It's tough to gauge who's really going to be the one to, I guess, the favorite, because Jordan Love just throws the ball to so many different pass catchers and spreads the ball around so much. That's why I say my best guess would have to be Reed. If I remember right, he's often been one of the first to score when he does score, especially with Love at quarterback anyways. So that's kind of where I'm leaning with Jayden Reed, but feel free to sprinkle in a Romeo Doubs, Deshaun Watson, Christian Watson. But my primary target here is going to be probably Jayden Reed to get the score. Houston has only kept what was a struggling Bears offense in week 2 to less than 21 points overall. So you know that there's going to be points scored. There's going to be touchdowns. There's going to be points scored. There's going to be plenty of touchdowns to be scored in this game. So I with Jordan Love throwing no less than 2 passing touchdowns in a game, I feel really good about at least one of these wide receivers being able to catch one. Now, I guess the only caveat to this would be if Tucker Kraft or Musgrave's on IR. So if Tucker Kraft snipes us again, like he did a couple of weeks ago when we were looking at Jayden Reed again, I don't anticipate that to quite be the case. He might snipe one, but I think we got a good chance for a wide receiver to catch one, at least one this week. We're looking at a game where we could score 3 touchdowns pretty easily, and Josh Jacobs hasn't been that touchdown guy so far this year, so it's going to come often through the air. So I really like the Green Bay pass catchers against Houston this week. Next up, we'll go into Tank Dell against the Green Bay Packers. He comes in at +115 for an anytime touchdown. The Packers have allowed the 8th most touchdowns to wide receiver with 7. And again, Jordan Love has no less than 2 touchdowns in a game, so there will be lots of scoring. And Houston is just one of those teams that's going to stay in games. They're 5-1, and if you know the other team's going to be scoring, you best bet Houston's going to stay in this game. So I just like Tank Dell more so now with Nico Collins out. The focus of defenses is going to be centered on Stephon Diggs and limiting his upside in the red zone and scoring opportunities. So that really just kind of puts a shadow on Tank Dell to break coverage and break off for a big gain. And if you were watching the game last week, you saw Stroud just honing in on Tank Dell. He loves this guy. He went and handpicked him in the draft after he got drafted. And with Nico out, Tank Dell is just the clear favorite. He led the team in targets last week with 9. I don't anticipate defenses are going to be focusing on him over Stephon Diggs, so that's really where I'm leaning here into this. He scored for us last week, had great odds at plus 200. If you got in that, great. This week again, it's a little bit lower, plus 115, but again, with the situation they're walking into against Green Bay Packers, who are exploitable, they have been pretty middling against wide receivers this season. Like I say, 8th most touchdowns allowed. So they've been okay, but they've been vulnerable as well. And in this game, I expect high scoring. I expect a lot of touchdowns. So I think that Tank Dell is the likely candidate to get one of the first few for Houston this week. Next, we're going to move into Mike Evans or Chris Godwin against the Baltimore Ravens this week. Mike Evans comes in at plus 120 and Godwin comes in at plus 170. The fact that one of these guys has cashed every week and they're still giving us plus odds on both is nuts. I'm kind of leaning Evans this week since he didn't get one last week. And it seems like Godwin has been the wide receiver that can just run loose and break defenses. Not that Evans can't, but you're more or less just focused on Evans in the red zone, and you've got to focus on Chris Godwin all over the field. So I imagine that Godwin, especially after his 2 touchdowns and 137 yards last week, I bet Godwin's going to be the focus this week. And not that it really matters, because Evans is notorious for breaking coverage and just coming up with some big plays in the end zone. Baltimore has tied with Washington for the most touchdowns allowed to wide receivers with 10 each through 6 weeks so far. So that's several games with multiple touchdowns to wide receivers. All 4 of Mike Evans' catches in the red zone have been touchdowns. He's very efficient in the red zone, and he leads the team in red zone targets with 7 to Chris Godwin's 6. Godwin has also caught all 6 of his targets in the red zone. If you want to lean Godwin, I don't blame you. Like I said, just kind of due to the way that the season has fallen so far, I'm probably leaning Mike Evans in this one. But both of these guys are very lucrative. We almost know as much of a lock as David Montgomery and Derrick Henry. We know that Mike Evans and Chris Godwin is going to score one of these guys. So I just like to throw one of these guys in here each week, because it's almost a given that one of them is going to score. And again, the fact that the books are giving us plus money and don't have faith that one of these two will score, come on, let's capitalize. Next on the list, we've got Diontae Johnson coming in with an anytime touchdown at plus 125 going up against the Washington Commanders. Washington has allowed the league leading, I guess they're tied for the league leading with Baltimore with 10 touchdowns to wide receivers. And Andy Dalton doesn't love anyone more than he loves Diontae Johnson in the red zone. He's got 11 targets inside the 20, and 5 of those coming in the gold zone, which is inside the 5. When a wide receiver is getting that much volume inside the 5-yard line, that's great. That's great news, especially considering that Andy Dalton hasn't even played all year, and all of these stats are coming with just Andy Dalton. I don't think Bryce Young ever got him close enough to really target Diontae Johnson in the red zone. If he did, it was maybe once. Nobody on Washington's secondary is going to stop Diontae Johnson from scoring the way that Andy Dalton hones in on him. And he is a playmaker. He really always has been. He just hasn't had great quarterback play to get him the ball. Last time he did was Ben Roethlisberger, one before he actually started to kind of deteriorate. So I really like Diontae Johnson. He's scored for us 2 of the last 3 weeks. So we're looking to make this a 3rd week for week 7. So that's coming in at plus 125. Anytime that they're giving us plus odds on guys like this, we want to capitalize. To move on to our next player here, looking at George Kittle with an anytime touchdown at plus 135, playing at home against the Kansas City Chiefs. He's got 4 touchdowns so far this season, and he scored in all but the Jets game in week 1, and then I guess also week 3 where he was injured. He didn't play in week 3, obviously, but he still scored in week 2, even the game he got injured. Kansas City has allowed 2 touchdowns to opposing tight ends so far, and there's just too many better playmakers on San Francisco's offense for Kansas City to hone in on George Kittle. I imagine they will to some extent, but he's not just been breaking off huge gains and just breaking down defenses. He's just been finding the end zone consistently. He's been the one pillar of consistency for this offense. You've seen Deebo Samuel kind of go up and down. You see Jordan Mason kind of have good games and then kind of falter. He's not been quite the CMC. that we're used to, but he's done fine. He just hasn't done all that great, been consistent like George Kittle has so far this year. So I really like George Kittle at plus 135, and he's got 5 touchdowns on the season. This is a smash play against Kansas City this week, and playing at home, I think that Brock Purdy is going to be looking to George Kittle in the end zone again. When George Kittle has those consistent seasons, he's really the pillar of consistency. So I like George Kittle going up against Kansas City for an anytime touchdown at plus 135. Next year, we've got Alexander Mattison with an anytime touchdown at plus 170 against the Rams. I know this sounds icky, but bear with me. The Rams have allowed no less than 24 points to be scored in a game so far this season. Yes, even a putrid Vegas Raiders team should be able to score without Devontae Adams. And the Rams just don't have enough playmakers on defense to hold anybody out on, I mean anyone in general. So how are you going to shut down Alexander Mattison? I don't think that's going to be their focus. It's probably going to be limiting the pass game. But even still, they don't really have the kind of playmakers to limit anything. They're just best to try to keep this game within reach and let their offense do their thing and score. So I don't think that the Rams are going to be trying to take anybody out of this game. They've allowed 3 touchdowns, or Alexander Mattison has 3 touchdowns on a team high 4 rush attempts inside the 5-yard line. Zamir White is nothing now to Alexander Mattison. He's the most consistent player in the red zone for Las Vegas, and he's going to get first crack at a touchdown when they get in close, especially without Adams there. And the Rams have allowed 6 touchdowns to opposing running backs so far this season. That's pretty generous considering. And then to couple with that, Mattison has scored on 3 of the top 10 rush defenses so far this year, namely Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and the Chargers. So he's gone up against some pretty stiff competition and still managed to score. And he's played against 4 of the top 10 rush defenses this year and still scored 4 touchdowns? 4 touchdowns this year, at least. So Alexander Mattison going up against the LA Rams. I really like this matchup this week, and I think that Alexander Mattison can punch one in for us. And at plus 170, we're looking at pretty good odds. He's the most likely candidate on this Raiders team now, especially with Adams gone to find the end zone. So we'll look to capitalize on that this week. To wrap up our main course of the parlay buffet this week, we've got Hunter Henry coming in with an anytime touchdown at plus 225 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jacksonville Jaguars defense is completely reeling. They've allowed a league-leading 4 touchdowns to tight ends. That's namely thanks to Komet's 2 last week. They've got injuries all over, backups playing all over this defense, and they are top 10 in touchdowns allowed to each of the running back, wide receiver, and tight end positions. There's no stopping any offenses. They've just been letting offenses run wild. And the fact that Hunter Henry caught one from Drake May in his first start last week is encouraging. I think that Henry is going to be one of those guys that Drake May can really lean on early in his developmental process, having actually seen the game, the field, and getting used to the speed of play. I think that he's going to want to use Hunter Henry, and the fact that he already found him in the end zone in his first start just really lends well to a great matchup this week against Jacksonville. So at plus 225 for a tight end that's clearly been go-to for Drake May, I like this coming in at plus 225. So that's going to wrap up our main course for this week. I do have a few honorable mentions for you guys. I'll run through real quick and then we'll wrap things up and get out of here. But Cooper Kupp, I was looking at for an anytime touchdown plus 105 against the Rams. He comes back this week, and Stafford has been dying to get him back, I'm sure. He's looking at potentially 15 or more targets this week before Puka Nacua returns. Statistically, the Raiders look decent against the pass, but they haven't played any great passing offenses. The Chargers, Baltimore, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Denver, no, just not great passing offenses. And Diontae scored on them in week 3 in Carolina's offense. So I think Cooper Kupp has a sneaky good matchup this week. And I think that Stafford's really going to want to be just honing in on him all game. So I really like Kupp, especially with plus money for an anytime touchdown. Next, we've got Joe Mixon with an anytime touchdown coming in at -105 against the Green Bay Packers. It's a middling matchup for running backs, but Houston won both games with Mixon on the field, and he scored in both of those games. And they're going to have to score to stay in this game with Green Bay because Green Bay is going to score. And with this is just a big matchup. It's an important matchup with Green Bay looking to build off of their 4-2 record, and then with Houston kind of struggling with some injuries, but still managing to come out 5-1 at this point in the season. These teams are really going to want to win, and I anticipate this game to be pretty close. So I think that Joe Mixon is going to be one of their most reliable guys and close. They're going to try to get him the ball and get him in to score whenever they get in inside the 20. So I anticipate, like I said, just a lot of touchdowns to be scored in this game, and Joe Mixon's going to be one of the surefire guys to punch it in the end zone if he gets an opportunity. So he is the red zone favorite, and I anticipate his first. He will get the first crack on the early downs inside the red zone. So hopefully he can punch one in for us this week as an honorable mention. Last one here to wrap up the show is Kareem Hunt with an anytime touchdown at -115 against San Fran. There's not a whole lot I'm going to say about this because it's not a great matchup, except for the fact that just Kansas City has always leaned on Kareem Hunt when he's on the field. He's seen 41 carries in the last 2 weeks, and they have just been able to push the ball downfield and really lean on him to sustain drives and keep them alive because this offense hasn't looked all that great so far this year. They've managed to win games, but they've just good play calling has been able to win their games. And just when you've got Patrick Mahomes, he can just get things done. But I think Kareem Hunt, he's just always really had a nose for the end zone. And with Rice out for the season, Hollywood now has been declared out for the entire season. I think Kareem Hunt's going to be first chance every week to find a touchdown. And if you go look at historically, when he gets a good workload, he will score more often than not. He could very well turn into one of those anchor plays that we use with David Montgomery and Derrick Henry by the end of the season. So Kareem Hunt cashed one last week. Let's look to cash another touchdown this week at -115 against the San Francisco 49ers. Now, to wrap things up here, I will just remind everybody to set a limit and stick to it. Let's bet responsibly. I'm just more or less doing the research here, and I'm giving you guys the information that I've found. So it's up to you to kind of pick and choose, put things together, play this little buffet however you like. I've given you the menu. Take bits and pieces, take some appetizers, throw them with some entrees, if you know what I mean. And let's have some fun this week. Hopefully we can bounce back a little bit from I fell from probably 70-ish% hit rate in week 5 to about more like 50 last week. So we're really going to look to bump those numbers up. The more guys we can get to hit, the more chances you guys have to win. So let me know what plays you guys are wanting to play or that you guys are going to put money on. Let me know your favorite plays. Let me know if you cash any. I want to interact with you guys. I will be kind of checking the comments. Let's have some conversations. Let's compare our notes. Let's compare our plays. This is all supposed to be a good time. So let's get excited. I feel really good about this week and being able to kind of bounce back from a little bit of a dip last week. So good luck out there, everybody. If you have feel like you have any troubles gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER for help. And we will see you back next week for week 8 of the IDP Plus Anytime Touchdown Props podcast. So thanks everyone for watching. You can follow me on Twitter at AxemanIDP, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.